I was 76 years old on the morning I realized my grandson, Tyler, had taken exactly $42,800 from me. Not around 40 grand. Not most of my savings. No, $42,800, right down to the last dime. I remember the number because it burned itself into my brain the moment I saw it on the Bank of America printout, the paper trembling in my hands as I stood in my kitchen in Dayton, Ohio, the smell of burnt coffee still hanging in the air. You'd think at my age I wouldn't be shocked by much. Heart attacks, funerals, old friends slipping away. Those hit me, sure, but they didn't knock me off my feet. But seeing my own grandson's name on those withdrawals, that was the kind of blow a man doesn't prepare for, no matter how many winters he's lived through. "You're probably confused about these transactions, sir," the young teller had said just 15 minutes earlier. She couldn't have been more than 25, ponytail too tight, trying not to look scared. "These transfers were done through online banking, from your login." My login, I remember my voice cracking. I don't even use the damn app. Her eyes softened, like she'd heard a dozen versions of the same sad story that week alone. "Do you have someone who helps you with your phone, or your online accounts?" I knew exactly who she meant. I felt the answer crawl up the back of my throat like bile. Tyler, 22 years old, college dropout, always between jobs, always borrowing my old Ford Taurus because it saves gas, always smiling in that way that reminded me too much of his father, my son Michael, who'd spent half his adult life trying to outrun responsibility and the other half pretending he had. "No," I finally told the teller, "I'll handle it." But inside, I already knew. And when I got home and printed the statements, the truth was right there in black and white. Same amount, same date pattern, same account. Same kid. What hits hardest isn't the money. Though don't get me wrong, $42,800 isn't pocket change. Not for a man on Social Security and a Teamster's pension I spent 40 years earning at the GM plant off Needmore Road. What hit hardest was the betrayal. The deliberate nature of it. The way he'd sat across from me at Thanksgiving, asking about my health, smiling, passing me mashed potatoes as if he didn't have his hand already inside my pocket, squeezing until my savings bled dry. "You all right, Grandpa?" He'd asked me just the week before on the phone, voice all honey and warmth. "Fine," I'd said, feeling tired but nothing more. "Why?" "Oh, no reason, just checking on you." Checking on me, sure, checking how much I had left. I remember leaning on the kitchen counter that morning, the laminate edge digging into my palms. Outside, a snowstorm had coated everything in white, the kind of Ohio storm that swallowed sound and left the world feeling like it was holding its breath. I could hear my late wife's words echo in my head. "Don't let people mistake your kindness for weakness, Ray." "You picked the wrong old man," I muttered under my breath, staring at that printout. And in that moment, something in me hardened like water turning to ice. I called Tyler. He answered on the second ring, chipper. "Hey, Grandpa, what's up?" My voice stayed calm, too calm. "Tyler, I'm going to ask you a question and I need the truth. Did you use my bank account?" A pause, barely a second long, but I heard everything in that silence. "What? No, why would I?" "Tyler." Another pause, longer this time, and then the sigh, the guilty one, the one people give when they're already reaching for excuses. "Look, Grandpa, I was gonna tell you, I just needed a little help. I was gonna put it back." "Put back $42,000, I asked. "With what job?" "I've got plans," he said, defensive now. "I've been investing, it's complicated." "Investing," I repeated, "with my money." He didn't answer. That was the moment I changed. The moment the switch flipped. The moment love, still there, always there, moved aside just enough to make room for something colder, sharper, and older than he could ever understand. "You listen to me, Tyler," I said quietly, gripping the phone so hard my hand shook. "I know what you did, and I'm going to get every dollar back." He scoffed, actually scoffed. "Grandpa, come on, what are you gonna do?" And that right there, that arrogant little chuckle, was the gasoline on the fire. "You'll find out," I told him, "soon." He laughed again, but there was a crack in it this time. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you," I said, "and I've never broken a promise in my life." I hung up. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking, but my mind clearer than it had been in years. People think old age softens a man, makes him harmless, makes him easy to fool. But they forget something important. We've lived long enough to see every trick, and some of us learned how to pull a few of our own. And that was the day I decided Tyler was going to learn exactly what 76 years of living could teach him. Every lie, every scheme, every move he thought he could hide. I was going to uncover them all. And I was going to take back every last dollar. You want to know how I did it? Before everything fell apart, before the bank statements and the phone call and that crack in Tyler's voice, my life was simple, predictable even. I lived alone in the little ranch house my wife, Linda, and I bought back in '88 on the north side of Dayton. Beige siding, sagging porch steps, a furnace that groaned louder than I did when the cold hit. But it was home. It still smelled like her lavender laundry detergent in the back hallway, even though she'd been gone 5 years. Most mornings I woke up around 6:30, whether I wanted to or not. Age does that to you. You stop needing alarm clocks, just the aches in your knees. I'd shuffle to the kitchen, turn on that old Mr. Coffee machine that sounds like it's gargling bolts, and sit at the table reading the Dayton Daily News while the sun tried its best to creep through the thin blinds. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand something. I wasn't some helpless old fool. I handled my own life, paid my bills at the counter by hand, wrote checks with a ballpoint pen, kept folders labeled with masking tape, sorted by year and type. I still drove, slow, sure, but safe. I knew my way around the VA hospital in Cincinnati better than some of the nurses. And I trusted people, maybe more than I should have. You see, before things went sideways, Tyler and I were close, or I thought we were. He used to come by on Sundays after the Browns game, plop himself on my couch and rummage through my fridge like he owned the place. He'd ask me questions about Linda, about the old plant, about the union fights we had back in the '70s. He'd listen, too. Not that fake listening young folks do. Real listening. Eyes on mine, chin in his hand, nodding. "Grandpa, what was the hardest job you ever had?" he asked me once, maybe 2 years before all this. "Raising your father," I answered, and he laughed so hard he spilled his Mountain Dew on the carpet. We spent 10 minutes scrubbing it with paper towels, him blaming cheap soda dye and me blaming kids who talk more than they watch their hands. I loved that boy, I really did. After Linda died, he was the only one who checked on me without being asked. My son Michael would call when he needed something, usually money or forgiveness, but Tyler called just to talk. At least that's what I believed. "Just making sure you're eating something other than canned soup," he'd say. Or, "You need anything from Walmart, I'm headed that way." Looking back, there were signs. But when you love someone, you see the signs and choose to call them coincidences. Like the time he asked for help with his phone because it's annoying switching between apps. He watched me unlock mine, 4-digit code, same one I'd had for years. He made some joke about how old folks always pick easy numbers and laughed, but something in the way his eyes flicked, quick and small, should have told me he was remembering it. Or the time I caught him at my desk rummaging. He said he was looking for a pen, but the pen cup was right there. I didn't question it, just said, "Grab whatever you need." And then the worst one, the one that stings the most. A year before this all happened, he helped me set up a new phone because the old one wouldn't hold a charge. "Let me get your email and bank app on here," he said, tapping fast, too fast for me to follow. "Makes things easier for you." I didn't realize then that he wasn't just helping me. He was studying me, studying my habits, my passwords, my routines, studying the gaps. You know what the painful part is? I would have given him money if he just asked. Not $42,000, sure, but enough to get him started in whatever direction he thought his life needed to go. That's what grandfathers do. We help where we can. But Tyler didn't want help. He wanted access. And I didn't see it, not then. The last good day we had together was in early December, just a few weeks before I found out what he'd done. He'd come over with 2 bags of groceries, milk, potatoes, a loaf of Italian bread, stuff I liked. "You feeding an army?" I asked him. "Nah," he said, "just trying to keep you alive, old man." We watched the Bengals game, argued about whether Burrow was gonna hold up that season, and later he helped me bring the Christmas wreath down from the attic. He hung it on the door for me, dust flying everywhere, and he said, "Grandma would have liked this." I remember patting his shoulder. "She would have liked you too." He smiled, a soft one, the kind that could fool a blind judge. That night he hugged me before he left. A real hug, tight, warm. He smelled like that cheap body spray boys use when they think it makes them look grown. And I remember thinking, he's turning out all right. He really is. Shows what I knew. Because while I was sleeping peacefully that night, snoring loud enough to wake the neighbors, Tyler was awake somewhere. Maybe his apartment, maybe someone's couch, using my email, my login, my trust, moving the first chunk of my savings, testing whether I'd notice. I didn't. Not then. Life was calm, predictable, comfortable in that way you don't appreciate until someone steals the ground out from under you. I'd wake up, read the paper, call my daughter in Indiana once a week, drive to Kroger every Thursday for the senior discount. I even had a little garden I tended, tomatoes mostly, though the rabbits stole more than I ever picked. I wasn't lonely, not really. And I sure as hell didn't feel old, not in the way that makes you vulnerable, the way he must have thought I was. People think elder financial abuse always begins with some stranger, some scammer, some nurse, some neighbor. But let me tell you something from experience. It starts at home, a lot more than anyone wants to admit. And in my case, it started with a boy I once carried on my shoulders through the Montgomery County Fair. A boy I let fall asleep on my chest during fireworks. A boy who used to call me Pops because he couldn't pronounce Grandpa. I didn't lose $42,000 all at once. I lost it drip by drip, week by week, trust by trust. I lost it in the smiles he gave me, in the jokes, in the help he offered. I lost it because I loved him. But love doesn't make a man blind forever, only long enough for the knife to go in. And believe me, once I pulled that knife out, I knew exactly where I was going to point it next. I didn't know it at the time, funny how hindsight works, but the first crack in everything showed itself about 3 weeks before I found the missing money. It didn't scream. It didn't come with fireworks or a flashing red sign. No, it came the way trouble usually does for old men like me, quietly, politely, wearing the mask of something harmless. It started with a letter. A plain white envelope from Bank of America showed up in my mailbox on a wet Tuesday afternoon. The kind of day where Ohio rain comes down sideways and soaks you before you finish cursing at it. I remember shaking the water off my jacket as I came inside, dropping the mail on the kitchen table the way I always did. I wasn't expecting anything. Banks don't write letters unless you're in debt or dead, and I wasn't either. I opened it halfway through my bowl of chili, not thinking much of it. Inside was a simple notification. We noticed a change in your account access. If you did not authorize this activity, please contact us immediately. I squinted, reading it twice. Change in access. I hadn't changed a damn thing since Linda passed. Hell, I barely used online banking. I paid bills by check. I liked paper. You can't hack paper. I remember muttering, probably some automated nonsense, and setting it aside. I didn't call the number. Didn't even finish reading the fine print. Just folded it and stuck it under the salt shaker so it wouldn't blow away when the furnace kicked on. That was the first crack. The second came 2 days later. Tyler stopped by without calling ahead, something he hadn't done in months. He walked in with that too bright smile, the kind he used when he wanted something. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, rubbing his hands together like he was cold. "Mind if I warm up a bit?" I eyed him. "Since when do you knock and ask permission?" He grinned. "I'm trying to be polite. Isn't that what old folks like?" I snorted. "Old folks like honesty." He laughed it off and headed straight for the coffee pot, pouring himself a cup like he lived there. I didn't think much of it then. He'd always treated this place like a second home. But there was something jittery about him. His leg bouncing. his eyes darting around, not settling on anything for more than a second. "You okay?" I asked. Yeah, just tired. You know how it is." "Do I?" He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Grandpa, come on. I mean life, you know." "Life's only hard if you keep stepping in the same holes," I told him. He smirked at that, words of wisdom. "You'd know if you listened more." We bantered, sure, but something felt off, like he had a weight sitting on his shoulders that wasn't there before. He tapped his phone screen constantly, checking something, acting like he had somewhere to be but didn't want to leave yet. Before he walked out the door, he said, "If you get any weird mail from the bank or anything, just ignore it. They're updating all their systems. Everyone's getting those letters." That stopped me cold. I hadn't mentioned the bank letter. Not to him, not to anyone. "Who told you that?" I asked. He froze, not long enough for most people to notice, but long enough for a grandfather who'd raised 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and a handful of headaches. "Oh, they're doing updates. I saw it online." But his voice had a crack in it, a tiny fracture, and just like the letter, I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. The third crack came the next week at Kroger. I was at the register, buying my usual groceries. Bread, milk, ham, those little chocolate donuts I pretend not to eat, and when I ran my debit card, the machine beeped. "Declined." The cashier, a young guy with acne and the enthusiasm of a deflated balloon, said, Do you want to try again, sir?" "Yeah," I grumbled. "Your machine probably just wants attention." I tried again. Same beep, same red message. "Declined." I felt a prickle crawl up the back of my neck. Not fear, not yet, just unease. I paid with my credit card and left, thinking maybe the system was down or maybe I typed my PIN wrong. Happens to older folks sometimes. Happens to anyone, truth be told. But in the parking lot, while loading my groceries into the trunk, I had this whisper of a thought. Maybe I should check the account. I didn't, not then. I pushed the cart into the corral, got in the car, and drove home listening to the same AM station I'd been listening to since '97. But the cracks were there now. Hairline fractures running through the quiet, predictable life I'd been living. And then came the crack that wasn't a crack at all. It was the sound of something breaking. It happened the following Sunday. Tyler came over again, second time in 2 weeks, which should have told me everything by itself. He was pale, thinner than before, and twitching his leg like he'd had too much caffeine. We sat at the table and he kept staring at the floor. Finally, I asked, "What's eating you?" He swallowed hard. "Grandpa, do you trust me?" I didn't even hesitate. "Of course I do." And he nodded, slowly, almost sadly. "That means a lot," he whispered. He stayed only 15 minutes before rushing out, saying he had errands to run. But before he went, he touched my shoulder, something he hadn't done since he was a little boy. "Bye, Grandpa," he said. "Love you." "Love you too, kid." The door shut behind him. That was the last normal moment between us. Because the morning after, I woke up to a strange feeling in my gut, a kind of knowing, a heaviness that didn't come from old age or arthritis. I walked to the computer, logged in, opened my account, and saw the withdrawals. One after another, week after week, all to the same name. All done through online banking. And then the final blow. A fresh $1,200 withdrawal at 2:17 a.m. While I'd been asleep. While I'd been trusting him. That was the moment the cracks finally split wide open. And once the truth came pouring out of them, there was no way, absolutely no way, I was ever going to be the same man again. There's a kind of silence that only comes when you're betrayed. Not the soft silence of an empty house. Not the peaceful quiet of an early morning. But the dead, heavy stillness of realizing someone you love has been stealing from you slowly, carefully, deliberately. That was the silence sitting in my kitchen the morning I saw the full list of withdrawals. It was January 12th, 2024, just after 7:30 a.m., and the sun was trying to push through a sky the color of old dishwater. My coffee had gone cold. The house felt colder. I leaned closer to the monitor, my breath fogging the screen a little. The numbers were right there. $600, $1,200, $1,800, $2,400. Every withdrawal spaced out like he wanted it to look random, but not so random that I wouldn't see the pattern when I finally looked. And the name tied to the linked external account. Tyler M. Hastings. My grandson. Not a hacker. Not a stranger. Not some tech scammer from across the ocean. My own flesh and blood. I remember gripping the arms of the chair as something hot flared in my chest. Anger, shame, disbelief. Maybe all three. It felt like acid rising up my throat. That son of a... I stopped myself. My voice cracked, the way a man's voice cracks when his heart does. You hear these stories on the news, you know. Elderly victim loses savings. Family member steals inheritance. You shake your head and think, damn shame, but it wouldn't happen to me. No one thinks it'll happen to them. I printed the statements, 52 pages of betrayal, each one sliding out of the printer tray like a small confession. It took everything in me not to tear them up. Instead, I laid them out across the kitchen table like a crime scene. The rustling of the paper was the only sound in the whole house. I stood there staring at them when I heard myself whisper, "You trusted him." And that hurt more than the money. Not 10 minutes later, I called him. You already know about that call, the one where he denied it, then cracked, then lied again, and finally scoffed at me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle. But what I haven't told you is how I felt after hanging up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of the phone. I looked old, older than I had in years. Linda would have told me to breathe, to drink water, to calm down, but Linda wasn't there anymore. Just me. Just the silence. Just the truth finally laid bare. My hands shook, not from age, no, from the kind of fury that makes a man steady himself on the table so he doesn't punch a hole through it. You want to know the worst part? I felt stupid. Not foolish. Not careless. Stupid. I should have seen it, should have asked more questions, should have protected my information like they tell seniors to do at the VA clinic. But when it's your grandson, you don't assume he's memorizing your PIN while pretending to help you check Facebook. I walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, stared in the mirror. You're not done yet, I told myself quietly, not by a damn mile. Then something happened, something I didn't expect. I cried. Just a few tears, nothing dramatic, but it hit me like a punch. Not because of the money, no. I cried because for the first time in my life, I realized my grandson looked at me not as family, but as an opportunity. My phone buzzed then. A text from Tyler. Can we talk later? I think you're overreacting. I'll pay you back, I promise. A promise. From the same boy who stole $42,800 while telling me he loved me. I typed back one sentence. Do not contact me again until I speak to someone first. He called immediately 3 times. I didn't answer. The sound of the phone buzzing on the counter felt like an attack. Finally, he texted, "You're blowing this way out of proportion." My jaw clenched so tight I felt my molars grind. Around noon, I drove to the Bank of America branch near Stanley Avenue. Snow was falling again, the kind that comes down slow and heavy like it's thinking about sticking around. I walked inside wearing my old navy blue jacket and my Teamster's cap, breathing steam in the cold lobby. The same young teller was there, Rebecca. Her eyes widened a little. "Sir, you came back." "I need to talk to someone," I said, "someone who deals with fraud." She led me to a small office where a man in glasses introduced himself as Joseph Landry, fraud investigator. Mid-30s, polite, with a voice that sounded rehearsed from repeating explanations all day. "How can I help you today, Mr. Hastings?" I slid the stack of statements across his desk. My grandson drained my account. He looked at the papers, then back at me. "I'm sorry, sir. This happens more often than you'd think." Not with me, I said, heat rising in my chest. Not ever. He nodded, opening a folder. Let's go through this together. We spent an hour reviewing every transaction. Joseph asked questions. I answered them with steady, clipped sentences. My throat felt tight, but I spoke clearly. He typed notes, occasionally muttering, "This looks unauthorized," and he must have had access to your credentials. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Hastings, based on what you've told me, this isn't just unauthorized access. This may qualify as felony financial exploitation of an elderly individual." The words hit like a hammer. Felony, exploitation, elderly. I never thought I'd hear those three words apply to me. Then Joseph said something that tightened my chest. "You have the right to file a formal report. Once you do, we're obligated to escalate the case. Law enforcement would get involved." Law enforcement against my grandson. I sat there, staring at the snow melting on my jacket sleeves. Joseph lowered his voice. "Sir, you don't need to decide today, but you do need to protect yourself. Whoever did this, family or not, knew exactly what they were doing." I looked him in the eye and said, "He's not getting away with this." Something shifted inside me when I said it. Something firm, cold, and undeniable. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't look at Christmas decorations still dangling from porches. I just gripped the steering wheel hard enough that my knuckles went white. The betrayal was real now. Not suspicion, not guesswork, documented, verified, named. And by the time I pulled into my driveway, the tears were gone, replaced by resolve. Tyler had dug himself a grave with my trust. Now it was my turn to start shoveling. If part 4 was the moment everything broke, part 5 was the stretch of road where the pieces cut me on the way down. Because revenge stories always make the middle look clean, like the hero goes from betrayal to payback overnight. But that's not how it works. Not in real life. Not for a 76-year-old man with arthritis, insomnia, and a heart heavy enough to sink a fishing boat. After the meeting with the bank's fraud investigator, I went home and sat in my recliner for, hell, I don't even know how long. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. Time gets slippery when the world tilts. The house felt too quiet, like everything inside it was holding its breath. I kept hearing Joseph's words replay in my head. Felony financial exploitation of an elderly individual. Law enforcement would get involved. My grandson. A felon. You tell yourself 100 lies to avoid facing the truth. You tell yourself he made a mistake. You tell yourself he's young. You tell yourself maybe he really was going to pay it back. You tell yourself he didn't mean it to go that far. But the truth doesn't care how old you are or how much you love someone. And that truth was staring at me from a stack of printed withdrawals on the coffee table. Late that night, close to midnight, I sat on the edge of my bed holding one of Linda's old sweaters, a soft, worn gray thing with buttons shaped like little pearls. It still faintly smelled like her, or maybe I just wanted it to. I pressed my forehead against it and whispered, "What would you do, Lynn?" Of course, she didn't answer. But I knew. The woman never hesitated to confront wrong, even when it came from our own son, even when it hurt. I slept maybe an hour that night, woke up gasping, heart racing, dreamed I was falling while Tyler watched from above, arms crossed, saying nothing. The next morning I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee while it went cold again. The house felt different, like I was living with a ghost version of my old life. And then, a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When you're my age, unexpected knocks usually mean someone wants to sell you a roof or ask for a donation you can't spare. I opened it. Tyler stood there. He looked rough, eyes puffy, face unshaven, coat zipped halfway like he threw it on while running. Snowflakes clung to his eyebrows. For 1/2 second, the part of me that loved him, the part that raised him on my knee, felt the old warmth. That warmth lasted exactly one breath. "We need to talk," he said, voice shaky. "No," I replied, "we really don't." He pushed past me into the living room like he owned the place. "Grandpa, come on, don't do this. You're making this bigger than it is." I laughed. The sound surprised both of us. It came out cold, sharp, bitter. $42,000 is already pretty damn big, kid. He rubbed his face. "I told you I'm working on paying it back." "With what money?" I asked, stepping closer. "With what job, with what plan? Tell me. Look me in the eye and tell me." He didn't. He stared at the carpet. Then he tried a different tactic, one I didn't expect. "Grandpa," he whispered, "if you report me, I'm done. I mean done. Whose fault is that?" His head snapped up, eyes wet and angry. "You'd really throw me to the police, your own grandson?" "Yes," I said. And saying that single word felt like stabbing my own heart. He stared at me, stunned. "You don't mean that?" "I do." He stepped toward me, jaw clenched. "Don't test me, old man. This'll blow over if you just—" "Don't call me old man." My voice came out like gravel. "Not after what you did." He froze, chest rising and falling. His eyes darted to the table, where the stack of printed statements sat. "You printed them." His voice cracked. "You're serious about this?" I didn't answer. He grabbed the papers. "These don't mean anything. You don't understand how online banking works. You probably clicked something wrong or—" "Stop." Just one word, firm, final. He let the papers drop. They scattered across the carpet like dead leaves. For a moment, he looked 14 again. The year he cried when his dog died. The year he asked me if there was a heaven, and I told him yes because he needed to believe that. But now he was 22, standing in my living room, pleading with me not because he loved me, but because he'd been caught. "You're not thinking straight," he whispered. "I've never thought clearer." He broke then, just a flash of desperation. "Please, please don't ruin my life." "You ruined your own life when you stole from the man who would have given you anything." His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he'd yell, or slam something, or punch a wall, but instead he walked to the door and put his hand on the knob. Before leaving, he turned back and said something that chilled me to the bone. "You're going to regret this." Then he was gone. The house felt darker after that. I spent the next week in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. I kept walking into rooms and forgetting why I'd gone there. Kept sitting down without remembering how I got to the chair. That's what betrayal does to you. It unravels your mind one memory at a time. My daughter Sarah called from Indiana. She asked if I sounded okay. I lied, told her I had a cold, didn't tell her anything else. It's a strange thing, being a grandfather and feeling ashamed of someone else's crime. A few days later, I drove to Kroger for milk and bread. I passed 3 aisles without grabbing anything because I couldn't remember what I came for. An employee asked if I needed help finding something. I almost answered, yes, my grandson. At home, the evenings were the worst. That's when the doubts crawled in. Maybe I should let it go. Maybe I shouldn't ruin his future. Maybe I'm overreacting. But then I'd look at the printed statements, the numbers, the dates, the deliberate pattern. And I'd remind myself, he didn't hesitate to ruin mine. By the end of that week, I had made up my mind. If I was going to get my money back, if I was going to get justice, if I was going to protect what little I had left, I couldn't do it alone. And I sure as hell couldn't do it by sitting in my recliner feeling sorry for myself. The descent was done. I'd reached the bottom. Now it was time to start climbing. And the person who would help me take the first step was someone I never expected. The person who ended up pulling me out of that darkness wasn't family, wasn't a lawyer, wasn't even anyone I'd ever have expected to lean on. It was a night shift nurse named Rosa Alvarez. Now let me back up a bit. I wasn't in the hospital or anything, though emotionally I probably should have been. But every month I drove down to the Dayton VA clinic for my blood pressure meds and a once-over to make sure I hadn't fallen apart too much since the last visit. I'd missed my January check-in because of the mess with Tyler, so they rescheduled me for early February. That's where I met her. It was a freezing cold morning, the kind where the air stings your face and your breath turns into smoke. I walked in through the sliding doors and the smell of disinfectant hit me like always. I checked in, sat down in a waiting room full of vets, guys older than me, younger than me, all of us carrying our own ghosts. I must have looked like hell because when the nurse called my name, her eyebrows lifted just a little. "You're Mr. Hastings?" she asked. "That's me," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. She flipped the chart closed. "You look like you've had a week." "I've had a month," I muttered. She motioned for me to follow her into the exam room. She was maybe mid-40s, quick on her feet, hair pulled into a loose bun, eyes sharp. The type of person who sees everything whether you want them to or not. "Sit," she said gently, "blood pressure first." She wrapped the cuff around my arm, pumped it, listened. Good or bad?" I asked. Elevated." She gave me a look. "You stressed?" I let out a humorless laugh. "That's one word for it." She didn't push at first. Just typed something into the computer, checked my pulse, checked my eyes, asked if I'd been sleeping. "No," I said. "Eating?" "Not really." "Any major events happened recently?" I hesitated. And that was the moment she put the clipboard down, pulled a chair close, sat directly in front of me and said, "Mr. Hastings, you want to tell me what's going on? You look like someone who's carrying a boulder on his back." It was the first real kindness I'd felt since everything fell apart. I didn't spill everything right away, pride's a stubborn thing, but I told her the basics, that my grandson had taken money, that I didn't know who to trust, that I was sick over the whole thing. She didn't gasp, didn't judge, didn't give me that pitying, "Oh, you poor old man" tone younger folks use. Instead she said, in a voice steady as steel, "How much?" 42,800, I whispered. She let out a slow breath. "That's not pocket change." "No," I said, voice cracking. "No, it ain't." She leaned back. "Has anyone helped you yet? Family, lawyer?" "No." "You report it?" My jaw tightened. "Not yet." She crossed her arms, not in a judgmental way, but like she was bracing herself to deliver hard truth. "Mr. Hastings, I've seen too many people your age lose everything because they were afraid to act. You need someone in your corner." "Like who?" I asked. "I'm not exactly surrounded by friends these days." She smirked. "Good news, you've got one now." I blinked. "You?" "Why not me?" she said, shrugging. "I deal with elder abuse cases all the time. Medical, financial, emotional, you name it. You wouldn't believe what some families do to the people who raised them." I didn't want to believe it, but I knew she was right. She grabbed her tablet and typed something. "Listen," she said, "there's an attorney I know, legal aid type, works with seniors. Her name is Margaret Chen. Smart, tough, doesn't let jerks get away with anything. I'm going to give you her number." I swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm ready for all that. "You are," Rosa said firmly. "Or at least you need to be. Because from the sound of it, your grandson didn't just steal money, he groomed you, took advantage of your trust, and he's counting on you being too soft-hearted to fight back." I winced. "You're not wrong." She softened again, voice gentle. "Mr. Hastings, you deserve better than what he did to you, and you're stronger than you think." I stared at her for a long moment. This nurse who didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but for some reason cared enough to push me toward the cliff I was too scared to jump off. Finally, I nodded. "All right," I said, "give me the number." She wrote it on a sticky note, handed it to me like it was a lifeline. But before I left, she said something that ended up changing the course of everything. "When you feel lost," she said, "start with one small step, one action, something you can control, then take another, and another. Before long you'll look back and realize you've covered miles." I tucked the note into my coat pocket. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," she replied, smiling. "Wait until you get your money back." When I got home, the house didn't feel quite as suffocating. I wasn't okay, far from it. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a direction. I put the kettle on, poured myself tea instead of reheating old coffee, and sat at the table with the sticky note in front of me. Margaret Chen, Montgomery County Legal AID. 513-774-22-94. My hand shook as I picked up the phone. Not from fear. Not from age. From the weight of the moment. The moment I picked myself off the floor. I dialed the number. A receptionist answered. Legal aid, how can I help you? I need to file a case, I said. Elder financial abuse. What's your name, sir? Ray Hastings. Have you spoken with law enforcement? Not yet. All right, we can help. Can you come in Tuesday morning at 9 a.m.? Yes, I said. Yes, I can. And that was step one. Step two came an hour later when I pulled out the folders from my desk, the ones labeled taxes, bills, medical, insurance, and started building a new one. I took a black marker and wrote on it, Tyler case file. Seeing his name there, in my handwriting, made something twist in my chest. But I didn't stop. I filled the folder with printed bank statements, the fraud letter from Bank of America, notes I wrote about dates and phone calls, a list of things Tyler had said, and every detail I could remember, no matter how small. Rosa's words echoed in my head. One small step. By the time I finished, evening had settled in. The house was quiet, but a different kind of quiet than before. Not lonely. Not empty. Focused. I sat back in my chair and stared at the folder, his name staring back at me, and I felt something shift inside. Something wake up. Something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. Tyler thought he'd picked a victim. He thought I'd fold. He thought age made me weak. But he forgot something important. I didn't survive 76 years by being fragile. And now I had allies. Now I had purpose. And soon, I'd have a plan. You ever reach a point in life where the anger sharpens into clarity? Where grief turns into grit? Where you stop asking, why did this happen to me, and start asking, what can I do about it? That's what the days leading up to my meeting with attorney Margaret Chen felt like. Not hope, no, that's too soft a word. Not rage, though God knows it still smoldered in me. What I felt was purpose, a feeling I hadn't tasted since my early days at the GM plant when the union needed every scrap of strength I had. The old Ray, the one who trusted everyone, who laughed easily, who believed blood was thicker than anything, he was gone. In his place stood someone sharper, someone who wasn't afraid to confront the truth. And the truth was simple. If I didn't fight back, Tyler would do this to someone else. Maybe another grandparent. Maybe someone more vulnerable. Maybe even me again. So I started preparing, quietly, methodically. Tuesday morning came cold and bright. I woke before dawn, made coffee, and sat at the table with the new folder, Tyler, case file, spread open like a map of betrayal. Before heading out, I did something I hadn't done since Linda's funeral. I wore my good shirt. The navy one she always said made me look like a dignified troublemaker. I tucked it in, pulled on my belt, brushed off my boots, and put on my old Teamster's jacket. As I walked out the door, I stopped, looked around the house, made a silent promise to myself. I'm getting every damn dollar back. At the Montgomery County Legal Aid Office, the waiting room was small and crowded, folks with tired eyes, holding folders, looking like life had pushed them around too long. I sat down, folder in my lap, and rubbed my thumb along the edge. Mr. Hastings, a voice called. I looked up. A woman stood in the doorway, mid-50s, hair in a neat bun, glasses perched on her nose, expression calm but sharp. Margaret Chen. She shook my hand with surprising strength. Let's talk. Her office smelled faintly of peppermint tea and old books, walls lined with certificates, shelves stacked with case files. She motioned for me to sit. Start from the beginning, she said. I took a deep breath. My grandson stole $42,800 from me. She didn't blink, didn't gasp, didn't tilt her head with pity. She simply said, "All right, show me." I opened the folder, spread out the bank statements like a dealer laying cards, told her about the withdrawals, the access changes, the phone call, the confrontation, the threats. I didn't hide the emotion, didn't sugarcoat anything. When I finished, she sat back, steepling her fingers. "This is a strong case," she said. "Painful but strong. We can pursue criminal charges, but I need to know something important, Mr. Hastings." "What's that?" I asked. "Do you want him punished?" She paused. "Or do you want your money back?" That hit me hard enough that I had to look away. Because the truth was complicated. "I want both," I whispered. She nodded. "Then we'll build toward both." She outlined the process. Filing a formal criminal complaint. Submitting the bank evidence. Documenting your health and age to reinforce the elder exploitation charge. Recording every contact with Tyler. Freezing future withdrawals. Subpoenaing his linked account. Getting law enforcement involved if he resisted. It was overwhelming, more steps than I realized, but her voice was steady, guiding. "Mr. Hastings," she said, leaning forward, "you are not alone in this, and you are not powerless." For the first time in weeks, I believed that. She handed me a packet, forms to sign, documents to fill out. I took them carefully. "Once these are filed," she said, "Tyler will know the tide is turning. He may contact you again. If he does, I need you to stay calm, record everything. Don't accuse, don't argue, let him talk. People who commit fraud tend to bury themselves when given enough rope." I swallowed. "I can do that." "Oh," she added, "and one more thing." "Yes." "Don't warn him, don't tip him off. Let him think you're backing down." That last sentence settled into me like a seed finding soil. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table with the forms and the packet in front of me. The house was quiet. Snow fell outside, soft against the windows. And then the phone rang. "Tyler." I stared at his name on the caller ID. My pulse hammered in my ears. I remembered Margaret's words. "Let him talk." I answered. "Grandpa," he said, voice shaky but sugar-coated. "Listen, I've been thinking, maybe we should just talk this out, like family." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice level. Just as she'd instructed. "All right," I said, "talk." He let out a breath, a relieved one. He thought I was softening. "I know you're upset," he said quickly. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I made mistakes, but we don't need to get lawyers or cops involved. I'll fix this. I just need some time." "How much time?" I asked, pen poised at a notepad. "A couple months, maybe 6." 6 months. To replace money he'd burned in 6 weeks. I wrote down everything he said, every excuse, every lie, every attempt to manipulate. At one point he said, "You can't really blame me. You didn't need all that money right now, right? I mean, you're old." Old. That word hit me like a slap. But I didn't react. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't give him the satisfaction. "Tyler," I said evenly, "I'm too tired to fight right now. Let's talk later." His voice softened. "Sure, Grandpa, I love you." I ended the call without saying it back. I wrote everything in the notebook, dated it, signed it, just like Margaret told me. That night, I sat in my recliner with the folder on my lap, staring at the new pages filling it. Notes, dates, conversations, evidence. Piece by piece, the case was forming. Piece by piece, I was building the trap he'd eventually walk right into. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something new. Control. He thought I was folding. He thought I was retreating. He thought the old man was giving up. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that I wasn't stepping back. I was stepping backward. To get a better swing. You ever feel a calm so deep it scares you? Not peace, no, not that. I'm talking about the kind of calm that settles in right before a storm breaks. That's where I was the morning everything started to unfold. The morning Tyler walked into the trap without even realizing there was one. It was late February by then. The snow in Dayton had finally started melting into slush, the kind that soaks through your boots if you look at it wrong. My meeting with attorney Margaret Chen had become a weekly ritual. Each time I walked into her office with a new note, a new screenshot, a new voicemail from Tyler, she'd look at me over her glasses and say, "Good, we're building pressure." And pressure, she told me, breaks people long before the law does. She had filed the official complaint with Montgomery County Adult Protective Services. Then she sent a parallel report through the financial exploitation channel at the bank. Legally, everything was in motion. All I had to do was keep giving Tyler the rope. And he, being who he was, kept pulling. It happened on a dreary Wednesday afternoon. I was stirring chili on the stove when my phone buzzed. A text from him. "Grandpa, I really need to see you. It's important." I stared at the message a long moment. Margaret's instructions rang in my head. "Let him come to you, let him talk, let him sweat." I texted back, "Come by at 4. He showed up at 3:25, pacing on the front porch like a man waiting on a verdict. Hoodie up, hands stuffed in the pockets, eyes darting like a cornered animal. I opened the door. He brushed past me. "Grandpa, listen, we've got to fix this. I've been getting messages. Someone from the bank called, something about suspicious activity. They asked me questions, weird questions. Did you report something?" His voice cracked on the last word. I kept my face blank. "I've been talking to people." He swallowed. "What people?" I shrugged. "Folks who know more than I do." That made him panic. I watched it bloom across his face, his pupils shrinking, his breathing tightening, his hands shaking. "Look," he said, stepping closer, "if you told anyone I used your login, that's illegal for both of us. They're gonna think you gave me permission. We gotta be on the same page here." It took everything in me not to laugh at the desperation wrapped in that sentence. I pulled out the notebook Margaret told me to keep. "Mind if I write this down? I've been trying to keep track of everything." His eyes went wide. "Why would you write it down?" he asked, voice rising. "Why would you, Grandpa? Jesus, are you trying to get me arrested?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm trying to understand what happened." He paced. "Look, okay, maybe I took some money, but not all that. And I was gonna pay it back, I just needed a little help. You have so much more than I do. You don't even use half of it. You're old, you don't need." I held up a hand. "Stop talking." But he didn't. He couldn't. Pressure does that to people. He blurted, "Fine, fine, yes, I transferred the money. You want me to say it? I took it. I moved it. I thought you weren't keeping track. I thought you wouldn't notice. And I was gonna fix it, but then you freaked out." I clicked the pen closed. He froze. "What?" he whispered. "Why'd you do that?" I nodded toward the small black rectangle on the table. "My phone. Recording. In plain sight." "You recorded me," he choked. "Grandpa, what the hell?" "You recorded yourself," I said. "You walked in here and confessed. All I did was listen." He stumbled backward like I'd punched him. No, this isn't fair. This isn't." "Grandpa, delete it. Delete it." I sat down calm, cold. Like the moment right before snow breaks from a tree branch. "Tyler," I said softly, "you gave yourself enough rope. All I did was step back." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing fast, breathing faster. "They're gonna put me in jail. You can't let them put me in jail. Grandpa, I'm your grandson." "You were," I said. He froze like the words hit him harder than anything else I'd said. The next day, Margaret scheduled what she called a formal review. I didn't know what that meant until I walked into her office and saw Tyler sitting there. He spun around in his chair when I entered. "Grandpa, please." "Sit," Margaret snapped. He did. She looked at him like she'd spent her whole career untangling people just like him. "Mr. Hastings," she said to me, "you brought the recording." I handed her my phone. Tyler flinched like it was a weapon. Margaret pressed play. His voice filled the room. "Fine, yes, I transferred the money. You want me to say it? I took it." He covered his face with his hands. I didn't know he was recording. You can't use that. She raised an eyebrow. He didn't need to hide it. Ohio is a one-party consent state, and he was one of the parties. Tyler went pale. He looked at me again. Grandpa, please don't do this. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt clarity. Not anger, not spite, not vengeance. Clarity. You stole $42,800 from me, I said. You lied to me. You threatened me. And you only came clean because you got scared. Tears ran down his cheeks, real ones. And I'll admit it, a piece of me cracked again. He was still my grandson. But Margaret leaned forward and said the words that pulled me back. Mr. Hastings, she said to him, you should understand that this isn't just about money. This is elder exploitation, a felony, and the evidence is overwhelming. He sobbed, please, don't let them ruin my life. I looked at him for a long, painful moment. Then I said, you ruined it yourself. Margaret slid a document in front of him. This, she said, is your only chance to avoid an arrest warrant today. Full restitution agreement, immediate account access, a legally binding repayment schedule, supervised monitoring, and mandatory financial counseling. He blinked. What if I don't sign? She didn't blink, didn't soften, didn't even raise her voice. Then I filed this. She tapped a thick packet labeled criminal complaint. With the county prosecutor tonight. He read the first line, and his hands began to shake. He signed, not because he wanted to, but because the trap was closed. And he knew it. As he left the room, eyes down, shoulders slumped, the weight of consequence finally landing on him, I felt something unexpected. Not joy, not victory, not satisfaction, just breath. The first full breath I'd taken in months. Because the execution wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about reclaiming what he tried to take from me. My dignity, my security, my peace, my place in this world as a man who still mattered. And step by step, piece by piece, I had taken all of it back. But the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because once the trap closed on Tyler, the real unraveling began. You'd think that once the papers were signed and the trap snapped shut, I'd feel triumphant. Victorious. Like the credits should roll and some old country song should play me out. But life doesn't tie things up in bows. Especially not when it comes to family. The weeks after that meeting with Margaret were some of the strangest of my life, quiet on the outside, noisy as hell on the inside. Because even though Tyler had signed the restitution agreement, even though he finally had to face what he'd done, the fallout had only just begun. 3 days after the signing, my daughter Sarah called from Indiana. Dad, she said, voice tight, I just talked to Tyler. He's saying you're accusing him of stealing from you. Is that true? There it was, the first crack traveling outward. I took a deep breath. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm responding to evidence. Evidence? She echoed like she'd never heard the word before. He confessed, I said plainly, on tape. There was silence on the line long enough for me to think the call dropped. Then Sarah whispered, Dad, he's just a kid. No, I said softly. He was a kid, then he grew up and made choices. You could have talked to us, she snapped. You didn't have to drag him to some lawyer. He dragged himself, I said. But she wasn't listening. She was doing what a mother does, protecting her child, even when he was dead wrong. You know what hurt? Her disappointment sounded a whole lot like blame. Dad, she said, we'll figure this out as a family. You didn't need to involve the legal system. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. Her voice cracked just barely. You always have a choice. Not when someone steals from me. Another silence. And then she said something that cut deeper than anything Tyler had done. You're tearing this family apart. I closed my eyes as a wave of nausea hit. Sarah, I whispered, I didn't break this family. I'm just picking up the pieces someone else cracked. But she ended the call without responding. And that was the moment I realized. Justice doesn't just cost the person who committed the crime. It costs everyone around them. The second wave of fallout came from Tyler himself. Margaret had arranged for supervised check-ins and proof of income updates. He was supposed to meet with a financial counselor twice a month and submit repayment receipts. He missed the first appointment. Then the second. He sent me a single text. "I'm trying, stop making this harder." I didn't respond. Then he left a voicemail the next day, his voice shaking, angry, desperate. "Grandpa, everything is messed up now. Mom's freaking out, my friends think I'm some kind of criminal, I can't sleep, I can't think. Why didn't you just talk to me instead of going nuclear?" I listened to it once, saved it, then added it to the case folder. He kept spiraling. Margaret told me he'd reached out to her office twice, first begging, then threatening to take everything public. She didn't flinch. She said, "Mr. Hastings, this is what unraveling looks like. Don't let it shake you." But it did shake me. Not because I doubted myself, but because I remembered the boy he used to be. The little boy who ran barefoot through my yard in July. Who learned to ride a bike in my driveway. Who used to fall asleep on my recliner with his head on my chest. Now he was a man, unraveling under the weight of his own decisions. And I felt every thread snap. Then came the night he showed up. It was raining hard, sheets of water slamming against the windows. I was sitting in my recliner watching an old western when I heard pounding on the front door. Not knocking. Pounding. I froze. Then I heard it, his voice muffled through the storm. "Grandpa, open up, please." My stomach turned. I stood slowly, knees aching, and opened the door. Tyler stood there soaked to the bone, eyes red, hoodie sagging with rain. His lips were trembling, though whether from cold or panic, I couldn't tell. "Tyler, what are you doing here?" He stepped forward like he was going to push past me again, but this time I blocked the doorway. He stopped, looked at me like he didn't recognize the man standing in front of him. "I need help," he whispered. "What kind of help?" His voice cracked. "My landlord's kicking me out. I can't get shifts at work because of the legal stuff. Mom's furious, everyone's on my case, and I'm drowning." "Tyler," I said steady, "these are consequences." "No," he shouted, voice breaking, "these are punishments." He grabbed the doorframe like he needed it to hold himself up. "I messed up, okay? I messed up bad, but you're my grandpa. You're supposed to forgive me. You're supposed to help me." Rain dripped from his hood onto my floor. I felt a part of me breaking again, but it wasn't the old part. Not the weak part. The part breaking was the one that still wished things could go back to the way they were. "I can't help you fix the mess," I said, "but I can help you face it." He shook his head slowly. "I don't want to face it." "That," I said gently, "is the problem." He stared at me with a kind of raw pain I hadn't seen in him since he was a kid. Then he whispered the words that tore right through me. "I didn't think you'd choose money over me." I closed my eyes. "Tyler," I said softly, "I didn't choose money, I chose self-respect." His chest rose and fell fast. He looked at me for a long time, searching for something in my face. Then he said, voice hollow, "Then I guess I have nothing left." And he walked away into the storm. I watched him disappear down the street, rain swallowing him, the way bad choices swallow a life piece by piece. Don't let anyone tell you revenge feels good. Justice, maybe. Closure sometimes. But revenge, it rots something inside you. I sat awake until 3 a.m. that night, staring at the wall, hearing his words echoing. "You chose money over me." I didn't sleep, didn't cry, just sat in that quiet house, feeling both powerful and hollow at the same time. Like I'd won something and lost something bigger. And when dawn came, I understood the truth. Getting my money back didn't fix the hole in the family. Didn't fix Tyler's life. Didn't fix mine. Justice isn't a clean victory. It's a heavy one, and I was carrying all of it. But the story wasn't done yet. There was still one more chapter. The part where I had to face myself. Face what I'd done. Face what it cost. I didn't expect the last part of this story to be the hardest. You'd think the betrayal would be the worst. Or the confrontation. Or watching Tyler unravel in real time. But no. The hardest part came afterward. When everything was resolved on paper, but nothing felt resolved inside me. See, nobody tells you this. Justice has an aftertaste. A bitter one. And you carry it with you the same way you carry an old injury. Quietly, privately, always aware of it even on your best days. 3 months after Tyler signed the restitution agreement, I sat across from Margaret Chen one last time. Her office was warm, almost too warm, and she had a stack of paperwork in front of her. "He's made the first 2 payments," she said, tapping the file. "It's not much, but it's something." "Something," I repeated, staring at the numbers. 42,800 is a long way off. "It'll take years," she said. "Maybe longer, but he can't run from it, not anymore." I nodded, but it didn't bring the satisfaction I thought it would. "What happens next?" I asked. She folded her hands. "Legally, we hold him accountable. Financially, he'll be monitored. If he misses payments, the agreement converts to a criminal charge. If he keeps paying, he stays out of jail." "And morally?" I asked, surprising myself. She looked at me for a long moment. "Morally," she said softly, "that's a question only you can answer." I left her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time, like I'd set down a burden only to discover another one beneath it. About a month later, I was working in my garden, pruning the tomato plants, trying to coax life out of the stubborn soil, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Tyler stood there at the edge of the yard. Not close. Not confident. Just present. He looked smaller somehow. Thinner. The swagger gone. "Grandpa," he said quietly, can I talk to you?" I didn't say yes. Didn't say no. I just waited. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I wanted to tell you I got a job at the warehouse on Salem, night shifts." "That's honest work," I said. "Yeah," he swallowed. "And I made my payment for this month early." I nodded. I saw that. He shifted on his feet, hands in his pockets, eyes on the ground. "I'm trying," he said. "I really am." I let out a long, slow breath. "I know you are." He blinked quickly, like he was surprised I said it. Then he whispered, "I never meant to hurt you. Intent doesn't erase impact, Tyler." "I know," he said, "but I'm trying to fix it." And that right there, that tiny sentence, was the closest thing to redemption I'd heard from him since this began. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I'm not there yet," I said. He nodded. "I figured." There was a long silence between us. Not hostile. Not warm. Just human. Then he said the thing I'll never forget. "I'm trying to become someone you wouldn't be ashamed of." That one hit me right in the chest. Not because he said it, but because I could tell he meant it. He turned to leave. Got halfway across the yard before he stopped. "I love you, Grandpa," he said without looking back. And for the first time in months, for the first time since the whole nightmare started, I felt something inside me unclench. "I love you too, kid," I said. He kept walking. Didn't turn around. But I saw his shoulders shake just once as he disappeared down the sidewalk. It's been nearly a year since everything went down. I still live in the same little house in Dayton. Still drive my old Taurus. Still drink coffee that tastes like rust. And yes, I still keep Tyler's case file in my desk. I open it sometimes, not out of anger, but to remind myself how close I came to losing everything. Tyler keeps making payments. Small ones, but steady. We're not back to normal. We may never be. But every now and then he stops by with groceries, helps me bring in the bags, sits for a while, talks less than he used to, listens more. He's earning back trust inch by inch. Not because I demanded it, but because he knows the cost of breaking it now. And me. I've learned something too. People think getting old makes you weak, makes you easy to trick, easy to use, easy to forget. But they forget something important. Old men have lived through storms that would snap younger folks clean in half. We've buried friends, buried spouses, buried dreams, and still gotten up the next morning to make our damn coffee. We're not fragile. We're forged. Tyler learned that the hard way. And maybe, just maybe, I learned a little something too. Not about revenge, not about justice, but about the fine line between protecting yourself and losing yourself in the process. If you're wondering whether it was worth it, I'll tell you this. I got my money back. I got my dignity back. And I didn't lose my grandson forever. It's not a happy ending. It's not a tragic one either. It's just real, complicated, human, like life tends to be. And that's enough for me.